Hello everybody and good morning. I think we are live. Welcome to the class. Happy Friday. I hope you are enjoying your morning. It's a difficult situation because lots of people are at home and probably you are studying or you are working, and it's possible you have some distractions at home, but I hope everything is okay and I hope you enjoy the class. It's possible we have some new people today to the class, and also some regular people also. So welcome everybody. I hope that you understand me. I hope that you understand the class. The subtitles and the captions are possible. You can select the subtitles and the captions to help understand. The majority are correct, but there are some errors as well in the subtitles. So hopefully everything is good. I hope there's no problem with technology, with the internet and with the computer. Hopefully everything will be okay. My dog, my famous dog, is in the garden today, so he's relaxing at the moment, but in a few minutes it's possible the dog will be very, very loud, so hopefully that's not a big distraction also. I have a new light today, so the lighting is different. Yesterday I had a big light, but today I have two little lights on the side. So maybe you notice the difference, and if you prefer the other lighting, you can tell me, okay? So the structure will be very similar today. We will do an introduction document, and we will explain the grammar, technical vocabulary at the beginning, because it's very important to explain the technical vocabulary first, and then during the class we will analyze and look at some of the material. It's possible a book, so I have a book here from yesterday and the day before, and the book is related to Dublin, so it's possible we can analyse the vocabulary from the book as well, and a few other ideas. There's exercises from the grammar book also we can check. Okay, so my objective, it's a very good opportunity for me to teach English. It's a good opportunity for me to work again, because in May it was necessary for me to stop working, and finally now I have a small space and I can hopefully continue to work in this way. And it's a very good opportunity during the pandemic, when people lost a job, people are changing positions, people are studying, and maybe it's a good time to learn English, and hopefully I can help with you. I know there are lots of other teachers available. There are lots of other classes online, which is fantastic. So you have a lot of variety and a lot of options, which is great. Okay. Yeah, so that's the principal objective for me, to try to help and also to know new people. It's a good opportunity to know new people. And for you, you want to understand English, you want to learn English, maybe you want to know a native speaker, maybe you need to study for an exam, possibly you need English for your job. So I hope these are your objectives, and I hope I can help a little. Okay, so that's just a little explanation. The class is possibly difficult. Yes, the class maybe is difficult, so I hope with a little patience you understand a little. And it's a long process. To learn English is a very long process. It's not possible to learn everything very quickly. You need to take time, but just to be clear and to have an understanding as well. Okay. There are lots of people with different levels of English in the class. We have people with low level, we have people with no English, and we have people who are advanced and proficient. So the levels are very mixed, and I keep in mind all the time this, and I hope everybody can learn something from the class. Okay, and that's it. So basically that's the introduction for today. I think the most important topics, and here is the agenda. So as I said, the introduction document, the book, exercises and speaking. So it's possible to participate in the class if you want to practice some speaking. During the class you can connect and via Zoom, and here is the meeting, the code for the meeting here. So during the class, if you want to connect and participate to practice some speaking, you can see the code for the Zoom ID for the meeting and the passcode. And during the class we can connect to practice, and it's a good idea for everybody to learn a little. I can give corrections and suggestions and help. Okay, so that is possible, and it's a good idea. Yesterday we spoke with a lady from Brazil, and last week Ivalo from Bulgaria, so lots of different people. It's very good. Okay, so I will close this, and now I will share my screen. So one moment, and I will share the screen. Everything. Yesterday we had a problem with the Zoom, so hopefully today it's working okay. Yes, okay, we're back to normal, which is fantastic. So this document on the left, for me, is the most important document. Every day, this document is the introduction and the base of English. So for me, there are 3 categories very important. The use of English is the first category, the tenses is the second category, and just grammar topics is the third category. And everybody who has attended the class is probably very familiar with this. So maybe you can relax for 5 minutes, you can take a break, or you can learn again. But for new people in particular, this is very important, okay? So the use of English accents. We have different accents in English, and for example in Ireland it's possible we have some particular strong accents. For example, the U, it's possible in Dublin the U is very strong. For example, Dublin, butter, bus, and phonetically it's probably a little different in the book. You could say Dublin, butter, bus. So the U is a particular accent for Ireland. The TH is also a particular possible issue in pronunciation in Ireland. The TH should sound th, this, that, these, those, but it's possible in Ireland the pronunciation with some situations like a D. So maybe for me it's possible my pronunciation has a little D instead of TH, okay? And O is also possible. For example, house, lovely. There's some particular strong accents, and that's important to recognize. But English in London, English in Manchester, English in Liverpool, English in Glasgow, very, very different accents. Okay, so really different accents. United States, very different accents. Australia, Canada, a lot of very, very different accents. Okay, and that's a big part to really understand and to learn English. It's very difficult. Okay. Phrasal verb. We have a category in English of phrasal verbs, which is the verb and a preposition, and it's a long list. We have a lot of phrasal verbs, and basically it's the verb plus a preposition, and it's possible literal, but it's possible a double and a second significance. And we use phrasal verbs all the time, very quick, very fast, with friends, with family, formal situations, informal situations. Almost every situation we use phrasal verbs, and probably we are not conscious, we are not aware of the difficulty for you to learn the phrasal verb and to recognize the phrasal verb. Okay, so one example is to come across. So the verb is to come, okay, and the preposition is across. So it's possible literal, the road, come across the road, but the second significance is to find. So I am cleaning my room and suddenly I find a book. So suddenly I come across a book. So that's just one example of a phrasal verb, and they are very, very common again in English. And the next section are idioms. So I'm just going to make this text a little bit bigger so everybody can see it. And the next one is idioms. So idioms are expressions. So just one moment and I'll try to make that a little bit bigger. I don't want to close the Facebook connection. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, so the next one are idioms. And idioms are like expressions. In Espanol, frases hechas. And again, every moment it's possible we use idioms a lot. And again, we have a long list of idioms, a very, very long list, and we use them all the time. Formal situations, informal situations, for humor, for entertainment, to make English a little more interesting and enjoyable. So we have idioms, and they're very important in my opinion to learn. Okay, so phrasal verbs, idioms and accents are the first part. Also conversation and pronunciation. So pronunciation is probably connected to accents, and pronunciation sometimes in English is difficult. We have some issues with phonetics, that sometimes it's silent, sometimes it's irregular, sometimes we have strange pronunciation during the class. is to try to identify and to help and to show you the little problems for pronunciation. Conversation is a big part to learn English, so probably you are in the same situation as a lot of people, because the majority of people learning English in general have a good understanding of grammar, have a good concept of English. In general, you understand English. That's the majority of people, but you probably need to practice more. And that's the same situation for a lot of people, that most people understand English in general. They can understand listening, but really the big area to improve is speaking. And hopefully during the class it's possible to participate for you. If you want to practice your speaking, it's a good opportunity today and every day to practice your speaking, and I can try to help a little, okay? So that is very important for sure. The next category is tenses. So again, every day I explain the same importance, but for example, Japanese, French, German, Indonesian, the language, it does not matter, because you need to be aware of the time. Do you speak, do you communicate in the present? Is the situation in the past? Is the situation in the future? So the time or the tenses is very important. For me, for example, in Spanish, I understand Spanish a little, but I have big difficulty to construct Spanish in the past and a big difficulty to construct Spanish in the future. Also, I speak French a little. Well, I studied French, and exactly the same. It's very, very, very difficult for me to communicate in French and in Spanish in the past and the future. So I understand perfectly it's very difficult to have a good concept of the tenses and the times in English. But basically, there are 3 or 4 very important concepts. For example, the simple, the continuous, the perfect, and maybe the active and the passive. So they're the 4 I want to introduce quickly. The simple, we have the present simple, one action in the present you do now. We have the past simple, one action that you did in the past that's completed, past simple, present simple, and the future simple, one action you will do in the future. Okay, that's the simple. We have a lot of irregular verbs in the past simple, which is more complicated. So we have a lot of irregular verbs in the past, and that's very, very difficult. Okay, the continuous, we have a time in English that the action is happening in the present continuous. So and the structure is subject, the verb to be, and the ing of the verb, the form. Okay, so I am eating, present continuous. Future continuous, I will be eating, and the past continuous, I was eating. So that's the concept of the continuous, one action you're doing continuously in a period. And I think in other languages you have the same structure. In English, the next concept is the perfect. We have the present perfect, and we have the past perfect, and we have the future perfect. Basically, the present perfect is related to an action that started in the past, it's finished, but it's related and relevant to the present. So it's finished and it's in the past, but the action is relevant to now. Okay, so for example, live. I have lived in Ireland for 10 years. So I started living 10 years ago. I continue to live today, so I have lived. The structure is the subject, extra verb have, and the participle of the verb, the third column. Okay, that's the present perfect. The past perfect is usually the period in the past, normally before another action in the past simple. For example, I had lived in Spain before the pandemic arrived. That's a perfect example. Past perfect, it's finished, and usually it's before another action in the past simple. Okay, and the future perfect is possible, a little more advanced. I will have eaten my dinner when my friend will contact me. Okay, so it is possible in the future. That's the simple, the continuous, and the perfect. They're the most important. There's another concept of the infinitive. So basically the infinitive is the foundation or the base of the verb. And normally in English the infinitive is to eat, to go, to drink, to have, to meet. Infinitive, to. Okay, that's the majority. The base, the foundation, the infinitive. Okay, conditionals. The theory for conditionals is quite heavy and quite difficult. The theory in the book for the conditional, the zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional, third conditional. So the conditionals for the theory when you read is complicated, but in my opinion, in reality, it's a little more flexible and it's a little bit more comfortable. And basically it's connected to if. Okay, so if I eat my meal today, I can have a dessert. If I speak with my friend, I will mention the football. So it's flexible in my opinion in reality, but the theory in the book is a little more strict and it's a big area. Okay, and then finally the concept of the active and the passive. So the active is the subject, the verb and the object. I drink coffee, that's the active. And to create the passive, you change the position, the coffee, and you add an additional verb to be. The coffee is drunk participle by me. The reason I mention the active and the passive is because if you are preparing an exam, it's very impressive and a very good idea to use a range of grammar tenses, and it's a little bit more advanced and it's very impressive if you can use the conditional and the passive. That's the reason I mention it. Okay. The next category are just other grammar concepts and other very important grammar ideas. For example, the substantive or the noun. So you need to be clear what is a noun and what is a substantive. Again, it's the foundation of the language. Basically, a noun and a substantive is a thing, a person or a place. Okay. For example, house, car, city, Brian, pen, telephone. The majority of things are substantives or nouns. Every noun needs an article. We have two articles in English, a or a, so the pronunciation is fine, a or a, and the second one is the. So the is specific, the house, but a house is in general, a or a. Pronunciation is possible the two, okay? They're the two articles. We have one rule when the noun begins with a vowel, a, e, I, o, u. For example, apple, the noun begins with a vowel, it's necessary an as the article. For example, an apple, an orange. That's one rule in relation to the article. That's the substantive. The article adjective describes the noun. So the adjective is before the noun. House, big house. Car, small car. Person, happy person. So the adjective is before the noun. Okay, so you have article, adjective, noun. That's the structure in English. The adverb is next, and the adverb describes the verb. So the verb to run, to eat, to go, and the adverb quickly, slowly, happily. So normally the adverb ends in ly. Okay, so that's the adverb, and the job of the adverb is to describe the verb. Drink quickly, run fastly, talk quickly. So there are a lot of adverbs, and I think fastly actually we don't use so much. But adverbs, the concept is very important, okay? After the adverbs, we have the category of modal verbs. So in English, we have maybe 8 modal verbs, approximately. For example, can, could, may, might, should, shall, ought to, must. Okay, they're the most common in my opinion. Can is related to ability. I can eat chocolate. I have the ability. I can speak to my friend. I can play the computer. So it's my ability. But second, it's possible for permission. Can I go to the shop? Can I ask a question? It's a question for permission, and it's also for ability. Could, may and might are the 3 verbs that are very similar for possibility. I could go to Italy. I could go to Spain. I could talk to my friend. It's a possibility and it's an option. Okay? They are practically the same. The difference is may and might are probably a little bit more formal and a little bit more polite. Just a little. May and might are a little bit more polite. Okay? Shall is related to will or should. So shall we go to the cinema? Shall we talk about the football? Is really a question, should or will. Okay? And should is typical for advice and recommendation. Should and ought to are practically the same. Ought to is a little bit more formal and more polite. The G is silent, so the pronunciation is ought to, and it's typical for recommendation or advice. So I think you ought to speak to your friend. I think you ought to watch the movie. I think you should speak to your friend. I think you should watch the movie. Recommendation and advice, okay? Must and have to are obligation. So must and have to are obligation. You have no choice. You must collect the children. You must speak to your friend. You have to collect the children. You have to speak to your friend. Obligation. The big rule after the modal, the big rule is the infinitive, to eat, to drink, to go. But the rule, it's necessary to eliminate always to. It's a common error and it's very important, okay? So I must go. I can eat. I could contact. That's correct. The incorrect, I must to go. I could to contact. That's the incorrect. So it's important and necessary to remember. We eliminate to after the modal. Probably the only exception is have to. Okay, so I have to go, I have to eat. That's possible. But I must eat, I must go. Okay, prepositions. So during the class, I speak a lot about prepositions. And prepositions are basically about position and movement and direction in English. We have maybe 150 prepositions, but basically it's connected to direction, movement and position. For example, the ball, the football, is on the table, under the table, over the table, below the table, beside, in front of, behind. So we have a lot for position, but also speaking. I speak to you, direction. I speak to you. I look at the television. Okay, so it's very important for direction, movement and position. Also, it's associated with emotion, because up is usually positive, up is creation, up is happy, down is negative, down is sad, and down is to destroy. Okay, that's the important connection with the phrasal verb. So normally in the phrasal verb, with the verb and the preposition, usually there is an association with emotion, and it's important to remember and keep in mind. Okay, the next section are subject pronouns, object pronoun, possessive pronoun and possessive adjective. Okay, so this area is very, very, very important to be very clear, and after the introduction we will do an exercise particularly in relation to the pronoun and the subject pronoun. Okay, so basically the difference between my hat, your hat, his hat, okay, or the hat is mine, the hat is yours, the hat is his, or give the hat to me, give the hat to him. So it's an area that's normally very confused by a lot of people. It's a typical error a lot, and it's very important to be clear in that area, and today in the exercises we will look a little at that. Okay, the difference between this, that, these and those. So this is singular here, this pen, that pen is singular away, these pens is plural here, and those pens is plural away. So it is very important the difference between this, that, these and those. Okay, and again every day I explain the importance of another, other, the other and the others, and the reason I explain the importance is because I have heard so many times the confusion and the error, and it is an important simple area to focus on. Okay, so for example, another is usually singular substantive. Another day, another dog, another person, another house. Another is typical for singular, and other is typical for plural. Other dogs, other houses, other people, other places. So other is typical for plural, and another typical for singular. The other is typical for a choice. When you have a choice of two things, do you want this coffee or do you want the other coffee? So it's possible the other in relation to a choice of two things. And finally, the others is related to a group of people. So do you want to speak to us or do you want to speak to the others? So it is important, and they look very, very similar, but the little detail is very important in English. Okay. Finally, suffixes and prefixes, again in my opinion, are a big help when you study. You should pay attention to the suffix and the prefix, because it gives you a big clue and a big secret to the structure and the form of the word in the family. Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? Is it a noun? Is it an adverb? So the suffix and the prefix is very good area to study. Okay, so I think that's generally the most important topics for today. We have linkers, we have conjunctions, however, furthermore, yet, and those linkers are very important and they're more advanced. We also have specific vocabulary. So maybe you are preparing an exam for a specific vocabulary, or maybe in your job you need business vocabulary, or maybe you need specific vocabulary, so that is important for sure. Okay, and then exam preparation is also important. The Cambridge exams are very popular, and hopefully soon I can maybe organise some particular classes for the Cambridge exams, the advanced, the first certificate, and the proficiency if there is an interest. Also the IELTS is very important, and writing. So writing is very important also, and I'm waiting for you to send some writing, and I can correct your writing if you want. Okay, good. So that is the introduction for English. This is an exercise, so we have seen a lot of grammar explanation for the last 2-3 weeks, a lot, and now I want to give you a little exercise and a little exam. Okay, so 5 minutes for an exam, and the topic is the pronoun. So remember the explanation and the difference between the subject, I, so the subject is for the verb, I like, you like, he likes, she likes, subject, and then we have the object, give the pen to me, give the pen to you, give the pen to him, give the pen to her. That's the object pronoun. So the difference between the subject pronoun and the object pronoun. Also we have the possessive adjective, and remember the adjective is before the noun, and it's possession, my hat, your hat, his hat, her hat, our hat, their hat. So you need to be very clear with the two different categories, because this area is a big confusion for a lot of people. It's so simple, but it's so important. And for me, I'm the same. In Spanish and French, I have a lot of doubts and a lot of problems with the pronoun, particularly when I speak very quick. And the same for you. When you speak English very normal, very fluent, it's very easy to forget and to make the error. Okay? And then finally, we have the possessive pronoun. It is mine, it is yours, it is his, it is hers, it is ours. So you can see the little difference and the little detail. And here I will put in the corner the information. Okay, so here I will put the information, because during the video we can do an exercise now. Okay, so I want to start with exercises. This is the first exercise, and you can see the first question, A and B, it's a conversation. So A, whose book is this? And whose is like cuyos in Espanol. It's a question. Whose? It's possession and it's a question. Whose book is this? Okay. And the answer, I, subject pronoun. Do not know is the verb in the negative. It is the subject pronoun. The verb is not in the negative. My book. Okay. So my is the possessive pronoun. You can see here. So subject is I, or he, or she, or it, and this possessive adjective is my book. Okay. And the transformation is A, whose book is this? And the second question, I don't know, it isn't. So what do you think is the best answer for number 1? Okay, so maybe if you want to consider and try yourself now, what do you think is the best answer for number 1? Okay, I think the correct answer is mine. Okay, so it's a substitution. It isn't my book, so this is the possessive adjective with the substantive, and here there's no substantive, so we need the object pronoun. Okay, so it is not mine. It isn't mine. This is the subject. Is the verb to be. Your is the possessive adjective. Toothbrush is for your teeth. So remember, singular is one tooth and plural is two teeth. Okay, so I'm going to write that here for my notes as well. Singular is one tooth and plural is two teeth. Very important, irregular. And I will put in my notes just because it's important. So singular is one tooth and plural is two teeth. Okay, so irregular plural, and the toothbrush is the brush for your teeth. It's possible a hairbrush, okay, for obviously for your hair, and very different. Okay, so here, is this your toothbrush? And this, again, subject pronoun, this, verb is, her is the possessive adjective, and the substantive is the toothbrush. So the substitution, this is your toothbrush and this is, okay, so what do you think is the possible answer? So because it's her toothbrush, what's the substitution for her? We go to here and you can see the word her and her. So I think we need to say it is hers. This is hers. Okay, so I hope you had the same opinion and I hope you had the same answer. I think that's correct, and we can check at the end. Okay, the next one. Hopefully you can see this. I'll make it a little bit bigger just in case you cannot see. Perfect, that's a little bit better I think for everybody. So the blue car, so article, you remember definite article, indefinite article. Car is the substantive and the is definite, so their car, and blue is the adjective. The blue car is George's, so this is for possession. Brian's pen, George's car, okay? And the silver, I think we can see everything, and the silver car is their, do we have space here? Their car, sorry, that's perfect. So the silver car is their car. That's the possessive pronoun again, so you can see it in the column here. Okay, and the substitution or the transformation, the blue car is George's and the silver car is their car, so that's the adjective possessive, but now we need the possessive pronoun. Okay, so their car at the bottom, you can see here. So what do you think is the correct answer for this? Okay, so if you want to type in the Facebook comment, you can put your opinion and your answer if you want. So I think the correct answer is theirs, okay, with the S. You can see the final column. Okay, so this is a very good example and very important. The next question, subject I, subject pronoun I, and you can see in the column, okay, so subject pronoun is I, and here I'm going to move this a little bit so you can see again. There's a lot of movement in the Skype and the Zoom. So that's the possessive pronoun, you can see. So the subject pronoun here is I. The verb is to find. It's irregular. Find in the present, found in the past simple, and found in the participle. So the verb to find, this pen, remember the difference, this pen, that pen, these pens, those pens. On is the preposition for the floor, because the floor is a surface, so we say on. So for a surface, the preposition is on the table, on my jacket, on the car. So for a surface, it's on. And it's a question, affirmative, it is, but the question is it, your pen, adjective, possessive adjective, your pen, okay, because we have the substantive in the first sentence. In the second sentence, we have no substantive, so we need to transform to the possessive pronoun, okay. So I found this pen on the floor. So for some people this is probably beginner, but it is very important to analyze the beginning, because for me it's a big confusion and it's a big area for a lot of people, so you need to be very clear, okay. We is the subject, remember the subject pronoun, I, you, he, she, we, okay. Cannot is the negative, and remember normally in the formal situation when you write, it's more appropriate when you write to write cannot, okay. So I'm going to put that in my notes. Cannot is probably more appropriate and more formal, okay, and more correct. In professional situations, in business situations, it's more appropriate to write cannot, but in conversation or in text message or in general informal situations, you can say can't. The verb is to invite, so it's the negative, and remember can is ability, so the negative here is the inability. It's not possible, you have no ability to invite people. The typical preposition with invite to, I invite you to the party, I invite you to the cinema, I invite you to. That's the typical preposition, invite somebody to. Lease is possession, and flat is the same as apartment. So we cannot invite people to Lee's flat. It is not our flat. So here we have the possessive adjective and we have the substantive. Okay, so it's not our flat. And what do you think is the answer for the transformation? So we can't invite people to Lee's flat. It is not. Okay, and if you need help, you can look at the dictionary or the reference here. So we is the subject, our is the possessive adjective, and we need to transform to the possessive pronoun, which is the next column, ours. Okay, so it is not ours. This is very important, very simple, but very detailed and very important, okay? My dessert. So I want to show you the difference between dessert and desert. So do you understand the difference between a dessert and a desert? The pronunciation is different, the spelling is a little different. The first one in Espanol is postre, and it's chocolate, profiteroles, ice cream, sweets. That's the dessert. But the second one is a desert, like the Sahara. In Africa, you have the desert, okay? And the first one is the dessert, the food. So it's very similar in appearance and in pronunciation, but it's very different also, okay? And there is a verb to desert. It's possible to leave. So if you desert your friend at the party, you abandon your friends. So the significance of the verb is to abandon, and it is possible as well. Very advanced and very creative to abandon. Okay, but here it's the food. So my dessert is the substantive. My is the possessive adjective. Okay, so you can see the list. Possessive adjective. Was is the verb to be in the past. My dessert was. The article. Ice cream substantive. Okay, so the article, specific, definite article. And your dessert, so possessive adjective, was the cake. Okay, so the cake is just different type of food. So the transformation. My dessert was the ice cream and your dessert was the cake. But how do we transform this to make one word? Okay, so you can see your is here, possessive adjective, but we need the possessive pronoun. So probably it is yours. Okay, so very simple again, but very, very important. And in reality, when you speak quickly, it's very important to be correct. Okay, again, university is the substantive or the noun. Her is the possessive adjective. My university, your university, his university, her university. Okay, you can see the list. Possessive adjective. The verb to be. I am, but the university was in the past. In is the preposition for the city, in Dublin, in Ireland for the country, in for the city. And his university, again the same, possessive adjective. So masculine. This is very, very important. It's simple, but it's so important. It's so common, the error, because in Spanish you say su, y creo que su es por masculino y femenino, pero en inglés tenemos her for femenino and his for masculine. Big difference in English between he and she, his and her, massive difference. And in Spanish you do not have the big difference in general between the two, I think. Okay, and his university was in Coventry. So the substitution or the transformation, her university was in Leicester and his university was in Coventry. So how do we transform his university to one word in the pronoun? Okay, and if you look at the list for help, his here, and the pronoun is his, so it's the same, and that's very, very important. And his was in Leicester, Coventry. Simple, important, very important. Okay, shall, the modal verb, is a question, will or should. A good example of the modal. The next verb is we, so the subject, shall we, because it's a question. The affirmative, we shall, but the question, shall we. Okay, watch the match, el partido in Espanol, the football match, the game. Here, or do you for the question. Affirmative, you want, but do for the question. Do you want to come to? So the verb to come, typical preposition to come to and to go to. Direction, preposition for movement. Our house, possessive adjective, and the substantive house, and the adjective our for possession. Okay, so the transformation. Shall we watch the match here, or do you want to come to our house? So how do you transform our house into one pronoun? And again, if you need help, look at the list. Our is the adjective and the pronoun is ours. Okay, so it is possible we have some errors, it is possible we have some mistakes, but let's see if we check the answers. Oh, and I think I didn't see it because of the size, so I'm going to zoom out just to check the answer. And here we go. Everything looks good. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, perfect. Everything is correct. Well done. Okay, now I think we go to level intermediate. And in the intermediate explanation, it's possible to use the pronoun after of. Okay, so this is very typical in English. Susan is a friend of mine. Okay, so Susan, I'm going to zoom in so you can make it a little bit bigger so we're very clear just to see the first example. Okay, So the first example, Susan is the subject, the verb is, one of is a very typical structure, but it's necessary the structure one of with the plural. One of the best days, one of the best weeks, one of my friends, so it's plural, and it's possession. My friends, your friends, his friends, okay? And the transformation, Susan is a friend of mine. So that is possible, and the error is Susan is a friend of me. But in reality, it's possible that people say this, and of course everybody will understand you, but technically it's Susan is a friend of mine, more advanced, more correct and better English, okay? And the second example, I am, so subject, verb, one of, Susan's possession, friends. Okay, so the transformation, I am a friend of Susan's. Okay, so let's look at the exercise. The first one, this is Rachel, so subject, verb, object. Subject, she is, verb, one of my colleagues. Okay, colleagues is the substantive or the noun. We have a few vocabulary for colleague. You can say workmate, so colleague, and the pronunciation is very important as well. Colleague, very important pronunciation. Colleague or workmate, jobmate is possible. And for the house, it's a little bit different. So for your house, you have a housemate or a flatmate. Housemate, oh my god, my spelling is really bad. Housemate or flatmate, different. So in relation to your job or relation to your home, there's a difference. So in your job, it's a colleague, a workmate or a jobmate, and in your house, it's possible a housemate or a flatmate. Okay, but here it's probably professional situations. So the transformation, this is Rachel, she's a colleague, and remember the new rule with of, so she's a colleague of, and what do you think is the correct answer? So if you want to look again, I think it probably is the pronoun here, a friend of mine. Very important. Okay, the next one, that is Mauro, and I think in the class this week we have a person called Mauro, so hello Mauro if you're watching, and that is Mauro. He is, so that's the subject, he, and the verb to be is one of, our is the possession adjective, and friends is the substantive in the plural. So he is one of our friends. That's Mauro, he's a friend, and the same structure, he's a friend of, what do you think is the correct answer? And you can see the list here as well if you want. He is one of our friends, and he's a friend of ours. Okay, so you can see here he's a friend of ours. I think that's correct. Number 3, I'm Alex, I'm one of your students. So I'm Alex, I am, very interesting, so this is a little bit more work you have to do. So I am, what do you think is the answer? We need to transform one of your students to I am a student of yours. Very good. And in the Cambridge exams, typically in the section of the Cambridge exams, you have the transformation of the sentence, and this type of activity is very useful and very similar to the sentence transformation in the Cambridge exams. Okay, who is, subject who, the verb to be, that lady, this lady, that lady, so present depends on the position, this lady, that lady, and next to is the preposition. Next to has the same significance as beside, so I am next to my friend, I am beside my friend, exactly the same. Howard, she is the affirmative, she is, but the question is she. Okay, one of his aunts, and aunts is tia in Espanol. Okay, so obviously you need to be careful with technically I think it's auntie. You have a few possibilities and they are all correct. You can say auntie in y in ie or aunt. Okay, but be careful, we have a different word which is completely different. Ant is the insect. Okay, and there is an expression, you have ants in your pants, very informal, and the significance is you're very uncomfortable or you're very restless or very uneasy. Restless or uneasy, you have ants in your pants. Okay, but here it's the family. My mother's sister is my auntie. Okay, so the transformation, Who's that lady next to Howard? Is she... yes, okay, so the same rule. A little bit difficult, so we need a substantive, a student. So is she an aunt? And then of... and what do you think is the best answer? So we're looking for an aunt of his aunts, so probably an aunt of his. So this is a little bit more advanced, a little bit more important, and in reality, again, when you speak, you have no time to construct when you're speaking very quickly, but maybe just for now it's a good exercise to practice, okay? Number 5, okay, so how do you know, it's a question, how do you know Carolina? Are you one of her classmates? It's a question, because inversion, you are is the affirmative, but are you is the question. How do you know Carolina? Are you, so we need a substantive, an aunt, a student. Are you a classmate of her? Is hers. So the little detail is huge and very, very obvious with the if the person has the error. So it is very important, okay? Number 6, you look like, resemble, parathere, you seem like, you look like Ben and Matthew. Are you, again, question, affirmative, you are, question, are you one of their relatives? So there is the possessive adjective. Relative is a very important word in English. A relative is somebody related to your family. For example, my brother, my auntie, my uncle, my grandfather, they are my relative, or my cousin. So the relative is any member in your family that you are related to with blood or with family. So a relative is the substantive. And I think this word is difficult in the translation in Spanish. So a relative is maybe somebody in your family. So it is very, very important, okay? A relative is somebody in your family. And here in the sentence, are you one of their relatives? So the transformation, you look like Ben and Matthew. Are you, so we need a substantive. Are you a relative of, and again we have there is the adjective, possessive adjective, but we need the possessive pronoun. And if you want to see the list, it's very small at the bottom, a relative of theirs. So in exams, this type of activity is very important. And to finish the answer, let's see, everything is correct, I hope. It's unusual to have everything correct, but I think we are okay today. Oh, we have one error. Yes, I spoke too soon. There's an expression we have in English, I spoke too soon. Okay, and I suppose there is another expression as well, to count all the chickens before they hatch. So that means you think you have all the chickens before you actually see them born. Okay, so the verb to hatch is typical for the chicken to hatch, the egg hatches. So the expression is to count all your chickens before they hatch. And here we have one error. So number 1, so I'll just come into here again and see what, hopefully, yeah, number 1 is correct. And number 2, so that's Mauro, he's a friend of ours. That's Mauro, he's a friend of ours. Okay, so let me see what the problem is. Does anybody know the error? A friend of ours. Maybe it's the, I know the problem, it's the full stop. I think it's the dot, the punto. I think the error is the computer for the punto. Yeah, because the other ones have no puntos. Yeah, because that's exactly, there's 2. You can see here, full stop and full stop. So it's correct, but that's the reason it's wrong. Okay, so that's the website from British Council. For me, it's very, very good website, and I want to continue with more exercises this week and next week. It's very good, but today that's sufficient. So we have a few options. Now is a good moment for a little break. If you want to join the class to participate in some speaking, you can connect to the conversation. So if you want to join in the Zoom, now is a very good opportunity. We are available to practice some speaking. So let me check the Zoom. I don't think anybody is waiting. But if you want, now is a good moment. If not, we will continue with the book. Okay, so here you can see the book, and I can show you the real book. This is the book from Dublin, and it's a little old, maybe 20, 30 years ago, but or years old. and I just want to show you some vocabulary and some analysis from the book. The structure is I will read the book first for pronunciation, and after I read I will analyze the vocabulary and the important grammar points. Okay, so the first one, I think the context is related to singing. The context in this chapter, so it's chapter 3, and the context is the person is singing in the convent. You remember chapter 1 was related and based in the convent, the religious institution, and chapter 3, I think the scene is related to singing in the convent. So it's like a little party, okay, and the description is the person singing. Okay, so from the opening note, Cap connected to something deep inside himself. I'm going to make it bigger as well. Connected to something deep inside himself, and the passion of his voice made the world spin back 40 years. It took everyone in the room along with it. All aging disappeared, and not a creaking bone, it's a little bit too, yes, or arthritic joint. The disease is arthritis, and I think arthritic would be the pronunciation. Arthritic, very unusual, very advanced. Arthritic joint was heard. Nothing but the joy in Cap's voice that conjured up the sunbeams of an Oklahoma summer. Okay, and I'll continue the next paragraph. That was how it was until he stopped mid-note. He looked down at Dina and became conscious of her, conscious of the present. He was suddenly engulfed in the sadness of their separation, and it made him feel old. They were enemies. They had devoted their lives to mutual hatred. They had grown up and grown old on it. Nothing could change that. History had dealt them a hand, and it would never be the summer again. Okay, so first we have the preposition in the circle from the opening note. So the note is possible when you write a note, that's number one, but in relation to music you can sing a note. So the notes in music and the notes in writing are a little bit different, and in this context it's the music. So the opening note of the song. Okay, and you need to be careful as well, because we have the verb to sing, okay, is the verb, and the substantive is a song, is the noun, and very important, and the person that is the singer. Okay, so pronunciation and the detail is important, and it's a common confusion for sure. So the verb is to sing, a song is the substantive, and the singer is the person. Also the verb is irregular, so sang is the past. So sang, sing, sang, sung, it's completely irregular. Sing, sang, sung, and the participle is sung. So it is an important verb, and here it's related to the note in the music. Cap connected to, so the typical preposition connect to the internet, connect to you, connect to my friend, connect to. Okay, something deep inside himself. So deep is the adjective, profundo in Espanol, but I don't know if you know the substantive, because it's very important. Deep is the adjective, and what is the substantive and the verb? Okay, so deep is the adjective, and the substantive is the depth. So the pronunciation is very important, the depth of your experience, the depth of your knowledge. And the verb, I don't know if anyone understands the verb is to deepen. Okay, so you deepen your experience, you deepen the river. So very important. Deep is the adjective, depth is the substantive, and to deepen is the verb. Okay, so here it's the adjective, something deep inside himself. So this is reflective, myself, yourself, himself, herself, ourselves, themselves. Okay, and the passion of his voice, spin. Okay, so made the world spin back 40 years. Very unusual creation here and construction. But the verb to spin is this action. Okay, like the washing machine, spin. The wheel, you spin the wheel. And to spin back is typical in the car. So you're driving and you spin back. It's very informal. To turn around. So to spin back is to turn around. And in this context for the years, to spin back is to go back in time. So it's more creative and more advanced significance for go back. Okay, but spin is a very important word, and we use it in different contexts. To spin is the verb. Spin is a noun in relation to the media. the media, the journalists, the politicians, they create the spin, like the rumor, the story, that's the spin. And it's possible a spin doctor is maybe the politician or the journalist, the public relations expert, the person who manages the media is the spin doctor. Okay, so that's possible as well. Spin doctor. Take a spin is possible in the car. So if you go for a spin in the car, a spin is very informal, for a little trip in the car. So to take a spin or to go for a spin in the car is possible in conversation. Go for a spin in the car is to go for a little drive, a small drive. Okay. My head is spinning. That's very typical as well. My head is spinning. I don't know if you understand the context. My head is spinning. So basically you feel sick, you feel uncomfortable, your head is spinning. Maybe after the party on Sunday morning, your head is spinning because you have a headache. Okay. And I think they're the most typical words with spin. And remember, last week we had an example of a phrasal verb, a spin off. That's a typical expression, a spin off. And my example was the series Breaking Bad. You have the original series Breaking Bad, and the second series was, I think, Saul, Better Call Saul, because Saul originally was in Breaking Bad, but a new creation, spin off, was a new creation from the original idea. That's a spin off. So it is an important verb for sure. Also, spinning is in the gym. You go to the gym and it's the bicycle, the class for the bicycle is spinning because the wheel moves very, very quickly. So it's possible in the gym you have spinning class. Okay, in the gym. So you can see one word and lots of different contexts and very important, but in this context it's not typical to spin back 40 years. It has the significance to go back. So my point is you need to understand the significance of the word, and then it's possible to use the word in other contexts. Okay. It took everyone in the room along with it. So it is the song or the singing. Took is the verb to take in the past. Everyone, so it took everyone, the song or the singing or the atmosphere, took everyone in for the room, for the preposition. Along is the preposition, like with. So if I go to the party, I take my bag along with me, or my mobile phone, or my wallet. I go to the party and I take along with me. So take with me is the preposition, similar to along. Okay. And here, aging. So everybody is familiar with the age. What is your age? What is my age? But it is possible a verb to age, the verb. For example, this person is aging, and it's the process of getting older. So it is possible to age. And here it is in the verb, I think, aging. Well, it's the substantive, I think, disappeared. The verb is next important, a creaking bone. So in this case, a bone is the substantive. The article is a, and creaking is an adjective. But we have a substantive, a creak, the verb to creak, and typical with the door. So when you open the door and the sound is old and you have a problem with the oil and the rust oxidado, and you open the door and the noise is a creak, like a little creak. So it's a little strong noise to creak. And in relation to your bones, if I am very old and I move my body, it's the same concept of the door. You open the door and there's a creak, and if I move my body, you can hear the noise because my bones are very old. Okay, so that's the expression in this context, because I think in this party there's a lot of old people, and it's important vocabulary for sure. So it's advanced vocabulary, but it is important. It is possible as well in your neck. You can have a creak in your neck, and I think it's the same one, a creak in your neck. And basically, you know, when you turn your head very, very quickly, boom, you turn your head and you have a little pain, that's a creak in your neck. I think it's the same concept of the door, because you open the door and it's very stiff. Stiff is rigido. Okay, so your neck is very stiff and you have a creak in your neck, a little pain. So that's another context for the creak. Okay. Arthritic is the adjective, and again the substantive is arthritis. Arthritis is the substantive and arthritic is the adjective. Very difficult vocabulary. A joint. So the verb is to join, and a joint is typical in relation to the body. So for example, this is my joint here, where the shoulder meets the arm. That's my joint. Your hip is your joint. So part of the body is the joint. I think this part is the joint where the two bones connect. Okay, and it is possible. A joint party could be possible as well. So it's my birthday party and your birthday party, and we have a joint birthday party. But also for the body, it's the connection of the body. The joint is this part. The ankle is the joint. The wrist is the joint. Okay, the wrist, the ankle. Good vocabulary. And it is possible informal. Maybe in the United States, this joint is this place. So I want to leave this joint is to leave this place. Very informal, but typical in the United States for a place. This joint, this place. Very informal. Okay. Not typical in Ireland, informal. That's number one. And let me see the next one. Joy is very good substantive. So you have a lot of joy, substantive, in your life. When you contact the administration, did you have joy? Did you have success? So it's flexible. Joy is like happy, but in relation to work, you have the job to do, and the question, did you have joy with the job? Did you have success? Did you complete the job? Okay, so did you have joy? A joy rider is very informal conversation as well. So the verb is to ride. You ride the bicycle, you ride the horse. Okay, so the verb to ride. But a joy rider is typically the person who robs or steals the car, or maybe it's their own car. So the person in the car that goes very, very fast and very dangerous, only for the adrenaline and only for the fun and only to enjoy. So a joy rider is the person who takes the car and just goes crazy. Okay, so a joy rider is that person, a joy rider. Okay, the adjective is joyful. I am very joyful. It's not very common, but it is an adjective, joyful. And joyous, I think, is possible as well. Joyful and joyous, more advanced. And it's related to enjoy. So it is related to verb enjoy because the prefix, like entertain, engage, it's related to inside, and enjoy means to take the joy inside. So it's all connected. That's the importance of the prefix, in my opinion. So the study of the prefix is very important. In is the preposition for my voice. I have something in my voice. So preposition in for your voice. Okay. To conjure up, for me this is my favorite verb. It's very advanced, but it is important. That conjured up, so it's basically to create, to conjure up. And the context is for the witch, the bruja in Espanol. You have the witch, and she or he conjure up an idea, or conjure up a spell, or conjure up a potion or a spell. The word specific in English is a spell. So to conjure up is to create. It's very advanced and very good. So if I'm in work and in the professional situation, you conjure up an idea. It's to create or accumulate an idea. It's very advanced and very good vocabulary. Sunbeam, a beam is like a ray of light. So a beam is possible, a ray of light. The laser, you have the laser beam. So a beam is typical, a line of light. And here it's the sunbeam. So the sunbeam is the light from the sun, and it is possible in Ireland and in English the expression to beam. The sun is beaming down. Okay, so it is possible to beam, and the sun is beaming down on me, and that means it's really hitting you very, very strong, which of course never happens in Ireland. So this word really does not exist, of course, in Ireland, because we never have the sun. But if you were in Brazil, it's possible to say the sun is beaming down on you. That's a joke. Okay. The next one, he looked down at. So this is literal. So remember my explanation for the phrasal verb. It's possible literal, and it's possible a second significance. And this is an example of one phrasal verb, to look down, and it's literal, but there is a second significance, and in this case it's literal. So physically he looked down at Dina. He is on the stage. So the stage in Spanish is scenario. On the stage. So he is singing on the stage, and he looked down at Dina. But the second significance, to look down at somebody, Well, probably on somebody has a negative association. So you think you are better than the other person. You are probably more arrogant than the other person, and you look down at the other person. So it's a metaphor that you think you are better, you think you are more arrogant, and it's probably very rude. So if you look down on somebody, it's bad. Okay? But the other possibility is to look up to somebody, and this is positive and very, very good. So if you admire, okay, you admire your manager, you admire your boss, you admire your colleague, you look up to your colleague, so you admire. So that's positive. To look up to somebody is literal, but the second significance is to admire, and to look down on somebody is negative and maybe more critical and more arrogant. So very, very important. But here it's literal, and again the importance of the preposition look down at. So very good example of the importance of prepositions. Okay, conscious. So basically in English there are two words that are very similar, conscious and aware. So I am aware of the person, I am aware of the situation, or I am conscious of the situation. I know in Spanish it's more consciente, I think, similar, probably in Portuguese, but in English you have two possibilities, conscious and aware. And they are very, very important and exactly the same. So I am aware of, typical the preposition of, I am conscious of. So that is the key, aware. I am aware of the time, I am aware of the situation, I'm aware of the problem, and the substantive is the awareness. So in football, in sport, you need to have awareness. You need to have the ability to recognize, to be aware of what's happening. Okay, so very good vocabulary. Suddenly, in Espanol is de repente, but in Portuguese I don't know, but suddenly is like very, very immediately, unexpected. Okay, so suddenly I think is the adverb, sudden is the adjective, and for me this is very important in the adjective. So as for example the weather in Ireland is constantly changing very, very quickly. So the weather changes suddenly, adverb, but there is a sudden change is the adjective. So it's flexible, and you need to be clear with the flexibility of the word between adjective, verb, adverb. That's my importance I give to the suffix and the prefix. I think it's very, very important, the suffix and the prefix. Okay. Engulfed, again, is very difficult vocabulary, and it's very common in English. If you are engulfed in work, you are engulfed with jobs, basically it means you have a lot, you are surrounded by. Okay, so to engulf is very advanced, and the adjective I am engulfed, I think it's related to the Gulf of Mexico. So you know the Gulf of Mexico, and it's maybe surrounded, or there's a lot of water. So if you are engulfed, you are in the water and you are surrounded by a lot. It's very advanced, it is quite common, and here he was engulfed suddenly in sadness. So sad is the adjective and substantive is sadness. So suddenly he is surrounded by the sadness and he cannot escape. That's the significance of engulfed. Okay, so he is surrounded by the sadness, and again sad is the adjective and sadness is the substantive. Okay, so just very, very, again, the importance of the difference between adjective and substantive, in my opinion, is so important with everything, with every word in English. Okay, and here they had, so it's possible the contraction, they is the subject, had devoted is the past perfect. You remember the past perfect, usually before another action in the past simple. And the preposition typical with devoted is to. I am devoted to you, I am devoted to my football, I am devoted to my food. It's devoted to. Typical preposition, devoted to. You are devoted to something. Okay? And lives, remember this week we spoke about the difference, the verb to live, and the substantive is a life, and the adjective is alive or lively. So we have that family is very important. To live is the verb, pronunciation. The life is the noun, and the plural is 3 lives, 2 lives, plural. And then for music we say live music. So the pronunciation is all a little different, and the adjective is lively. Okay, and or alive. You have another possibility. Alive. Sorry, together. Adjective. Okay, and here again, this is another example because everybody, the majority of people understand the verb to hate. I hate the weather, I hate the food, so the verb to hate, but not everybody understands the substantive. So the substantive is the hatred. He has a lot of hatred, she has a lot of hatred, so substantive is hatred and the verb is hate. So very, very important. To hate is the verb and hatred is the substantive. Okay, good. And then another phrasal verb, very important, to grow up. So grow is crecer, and in your job you grow professionally, you grow in the garden, you grow. But grow up is combination very associated with children. So the child grows up. So with up, it's very associated with children. Grow is general. Grow in the company, grow the business, grow in the garden. But grow up has a big association with the child and to mature. So it's an insult. If you say to the person, grow up, it's an insult because you think the person should mature. Okay, so that's an example. They had grown up together as children. So it is very important, and I want to explain a little. So to grow up is for children, and the typical error is in the company. I have heard so many times people speak in English and say to grow up in the company. I have heard this so many times, but this is the error and this is the mistake, because grow up is just for children and just to mature, and in the company we eliminate up. It's understandable, but it's not common. So just to grow in the company, to progress in the company, but grow up is purely associated with children and to mature. So it's an error when you say grow up in the company. Okay, and also to raise children is associated with this, and to bring up. We have some vocabulary in relation to this. So the parent, typically the parent brings up the child. That's the action for the parent. The parent brings up the child, to educate, to nurture, to bring up. The second significance is to raise. So we have two verbs, to rise and to raise. And this is important. So the verb is to rise and the verb is to raise. And you need to be very careful and very clear with the difference. So to rise is typically maybe the temperature as the subject. The temperature rises, the price rises. So when it's the subject, or like price, temperature, we say the temperature, or the sun rises, the temperature rises, the price rises. But if it's the person, normally it's raise. I raise the child, I raise my hand, I raise a question, is to introduce a question. But specifically with children, if you raise children, the significance is you educate the child, you give the child love, you give the child attention, you protect the child. To raise the child has the same significance to bring up the child. Okay, so it's very, very important, this area. So for example, I was raised is the passive. I was raised in Dublin. I grew up in Dublin. I was brought up in Dublin. That's in the passive, but they're very important. Okay, so it's possible to grow up, and grow old is maybe with two people spend time together when they are very old. They grow old together. Okay, okay, good. History. So I want to explain the difference between history and story. So basically, for your country or for the subject in school, you study history. In school you have history of Spain, history of Brazil, history of Bolivia, history of Indonesia. That's the subject. But the story is a bit more general. I have a story from the weekend. I want to tell you a story about my holiday. Story. So there's a big difference in the context and the use of story from your holiday, story from the weekend, but the history of the country and the history of in school, the subject. Okay. And the final example is to deal. So the verb to deal is tratar. Okay, so to deal the cards, typically in poker. So you have poker and you deal the cards. Okay, but to make a deal is in business. You make an agreement. So it's similar concept to make a deal. And in cards, we say to deal your hand. So you play poker and this is your hand. okay? And the man or the woman deals your hand, so this is your hand, but it's a metaphor for life. So if somebody in life, you receive bad situation, you receive bad conditions in your life, it's not your fault, it was given to you. That's the expression. You were, in the passive, remember the passive, you were dealt a bad hand. It's a metaphor for you received a bad action or bad conditions, okay? And here, history had dealt them a hand. So history, it's not their action, it's because of the economy, because of what happened. That situation gave them the context, or their current situation. It's a difficult expression, but it is very common, okay? And I think that's sufficient for today for the analysis. Okay, so I'm still available if anybody now wants to practice with the speaking. It's possible if you want to join the class. I think now is the perfect moment if you want to practice. It would be fantastic to speak with somebody from Indonesia, from Vietnam, from Thailand, from Brazil, from Spain. It would be great. So if you want to connect, it would be very good. Maybe you do not have Zoom available and Facebook available at the same time. Maybe that's a problem. But for me, it would be very good exercise, and it's an opportunity for you to practice if you want. Okay? So, also, again, remember, I'm very happy to teach for free. It's a very good opportunity for me. I hope you are learning a little. Everything is free. But if you want to give me a little support or a little contribution, it's welcome and available. You can do it by Bizum in Spain, that's the telephone number, or the bank details in the bottom if you want to donate or contribute €1. It will be a great support for me. Or PayPal, there's the website at the top for PayPal, or with your telephone you can scan the code, because maybe in the future it's possible I will need your help and need your support, and at the moment it's a very good opportunity for me. So if it's an option, and if you want, it would be great. Somebody contributed yesterday, and I didn't see the name. There was one contribution yesterday in relation to the name and the bank. So if you want to contact me and tell me your name, because I don't know who did it, but thank you very much anyway. Okay, so it looks like we have nobody for the chat, which is a pity. So tomorrow this is available again, and normally what happens when I finish the class, when I close the class, somebody connects. That's the usual situation, but it looks like nobody today. Okay, so have a great day, and thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for attending, and I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Okay, have a great day, and talk to you later. Bye bye.